There will never be another series quite like Violet Evergarden. In an ever-increasing world full of technological advancements, we as a society have made it so easy for people to communicate with each other around the world. Smartphones, tablets, computers, and the revolutionary invention of the internet have made it so that connecting with people has never been so easily accessible and abundant in human history. Yet, even with modern-day technology, why is it then does it feel like we as humans are more disconnected than ever before? With so many different methods of communication, you would think that we as people would be able to properly communicate the true meaning behind the words we type. But it's never that simple. Violet Evergarden as a series understands the ethos of how difficult it can be to properly convey your true emotions to another person. The words that we say or type to each other often aren't the true meaning behind our intentions. The subtleties and nuances of emotion often get lost in translation. And because of that, we hurt each other and say things that we don't truly mean. However, through a shared bond, understanding, and empathy, it's possible to convey the emotions you hold deep down inside to the person you've always wanted to tell but never could. When I first watched Violet Evergarden a few years ago, I didn't understand it in the way that I do now. I just thought that it was a good series in that it followed Violet, a girl who didn't understand emotions, and through her journey of meeting all kinds of different people, she would begin to understand emotions a little bit better. I thought that these self-contained episodes were good for what they were trying to do, with some exceptional highlights. I've always thought that the war and military aspect in both Violet as a character and the show's narrative was its weakest link, as it felt a bit out of place. While I still feel the same about having it in its story, I've grown to like how Violet's backstory was integrated into her character, as it's a nice contrast to show how she was in the beginning of the series and how far she's come now. Before I rewatched the TV series for my breakdown and analysis of it, I never really thought too deeply about Violet Evergarden as a show. But now, after having experienced it through a greater lens of emotional intelligence, I've come to realize how special Violet Evergarden truly is and why the end of the franchise matters so much. The final Violet Evergarden movie was initially released on September 18th, 2020 in Japan, but as the world was still in the midst of a global pandemic, fans outside of Japan had no real way to watch it unless your country was lucky enough to even license it at the time. However, it's only just recently, at the tail end of 2021, that Netflix acquired the rights to the film and fans out of luck were finally able to view it. The final Violet Evergarden movie stands as an emotionally cathartic end to a much beloved franchise that captured the hearts of many people around the world. But it also symbolizes a significant and heartbreaking change for the studio behind it, Kyoto Animation. In July of 2019, Japan witnessed one of the worst terror attacks ever seen in recent years. Kyoto Animation, the studio responsible for works such as A Silent Voice, K-On!, Clannad, and so many more, was burnt to the ground. Now known by the community as the KyoAni arson attack, it killed 36 people and injured another 34. Among those who passed away, both old and new upcoming animators tragically lost their lives that day, and more than 2/3 of the victims were women, as Kyoto Animation was known as a studio who hired primarily female staff members. Even to this day, I still remember it vividly. Waking up to the news of the attack, I was at a loss for words. I didn't know whether or not I should feel angry at the world or deeply saddened by the lives lost. I was just there, sitting in my room, powerless to do anything for the people who helped change my perspective on life through their works of art. It was honestly one of the worst experiences I've ever had in my life, being unable to do anything for something I cared about so passionately. There's a video on my channel that I made when the incident occurred, titled Kyoto Animation Changed My Life, and to this day, I could never rewatch it because of all the memories it holds. It's not an analysis or review of any kind, but my pure, genuine, and raw emotions at the time, and I'm pretty sure that you can hear me tearing up during the recording of that video. It was meant as a tribute for how people behind Kyoto Animation's work of art changed my life for the better, and it was almost never made. I was someone, and at times still am, a person who is secretive about my emotions because I used to think that not caring about anything important in my life would lead me to never be hurt. But it was through the life-changing works of Kyoto Animation that taught me that living life like that was never the correct path forward. And so I decided to make that video so that I wouldn't regret it in the future, which I can proudly say that I'm glad that I did, despite the circumstances. So where am I going with this? The reason why I'm telling you all this context and history about the studio is that this final Violet Evergarden movie is likely the last work of art that many of the victims worked on before they tragically passed away. And with this knowledge, the whole film takes on an even bigger message, being that the studio will never be the same again afterwards. The initial introduction of the film takes place years into the future following a young woman named Daisy whose grandmother had recently passed away. From the way the scene is directed and Daisy's somber attitude, we can tell how much she cared about her grandma with few words needed to convey the heavy emotion she was feeling at the time. While going through her grandma's belongings, she finds past letters that were written for her birthday for the last 50 years, and this clues us in as the audience to see that the grandmother was actually Anne, the little girl from episode 10 of the series. Daisy holds many pent-up emotions due to her passing and reacts in a passive-aggressive manner towards her parents because she's unable to properly communicate her feelings. When dealing with loss, it's hard for people to convey their true emotions because you feel so many different ones at once. You might be angry or frustrated at yourself or others because you feel like you could have done something more to help. Other times, you might feel a deep, overwhelming sadness that consumes you that you are unable to control. For Daisy, she suppresses her true emotions, hiding under a facade of cynicism despite needing a cathartic release. But it's through reading Anne's letters that she realizes how important it is for her to convey her own feelings to the people she cares about, namely her parents. Letters in Violet Evergarden act as vehicles for emotion for the one sending to the person receiving. It's a carefully delicate and genuine outpour of one's emotions to another. And throughout the series, letters are used to bring people closer together. No matter who you are or where you're from, letters have the effect to bridge the connection between two people. Whether it's a romantic passion from two lovers, a reconciliation of family members, or a farewell from someone you can never see again. Through reading the letters that were meant for Anne, Daisy finds the inspiration inside herself to write a letter for her parents. This opening scene showcases how important letters were in the past and how they can still be despite the modern invention of the telephone. Letters have the power to travel through both space and time, and the scenic shot where a letter flies throughout the wind is a great illustration of this. What I love about Violet Evergarden as a story is that it feels like one of those rare pieces of fiction where every single element of it has so much care and thought put into it. KyoAni's adaptation of it is nothing short of masterful, with every shot, every action, and every frame being absolutely gorgeous. I can't find a single moment in the series where anything is wasted. Combine this with an orchestral soundtrack composed by Evan Call, fitted for the time period, and the series sounds just as beautiful as it looks. Yui Ishikawa, the voice of Violet, does what is arguably her best performance yet, and it's not like she's a stranger to being in big roles either, her other most notable one being Mikasa from Attack on Titan. On the technical and production side of things, this is every anime fan's dream. A perfect production that doesn't cut corners in quality, all in service to tell Violet's emotional journey. What do the words "I love you" mean? Now, I'll try not to repeat the analysis I did for Violet during the series, which you can watch in a separate 30-minute video, but I think the ending of the TV series marked what was essentially the end of Violet's character arc. It gave us more than just a satisfying conclusion, but a remarkable character journey that was built up for the entire series. Violet started off as an emotionless doll, only doing what she was told to do. She had no agency or life purpose other than to serve the military under Major Gilbert. A person's feelings and emotions were concepts that were alien to Violet, but through becoming an auto-memory doll and writing letters for people she comes across in life, she was able to gain the empathy in order to experience all different kinds kinds of emotions she was unable to communicate. Violet's personal journey throughout the series is for her to understand the last words that Major Gilbert had said to her, and by the end of the last episode, Violet finally understood the meaning behind those words. While she wasn't able to reciprocate her feelings back to him, she had already come to terms with his passing. It was a mostly completed character arc. Now, from this point on, I'm going to be in spoiler territories, so if you don't want to know what happens in the movie, this is your final warning to exit out. Or you can skip ahead to this timestamp right here. Alright, so the first time the film was announced, there was a heavy implication that Major Gilbert wasn't actually dead. I was initially a little bit disappointed, and this was because I thought that him turning out to be alive was going to undermine the emotional journey that Violet had went through. I thought that because of this, the series was going to be less impactful in the future, but to my surprise, after having watched the film again, it actually adds more significance to Violet's character because she was finally able to say what she couldn't all this time. Taking place a few years after the ending of the TV series, Violet is still diligently working as an auto-memory doll, but has become well-renowned for her profoundly captivating letters. She's mostly come to terms with the fact that she can never see Major Gilbert again, but deep down inside, she can never truly let go. Violet has deep, unrequited emotions that can never be conveyed. Throughout the film, we follow Violet in two main plot lines, the first of which is writing letters for a terminally ill boy to send to his family after his passing, and the second being a loose thread that Major Gilbert could still be alive somewhere. Eurus is a bedridden young boy who is terminally ill but wants to send a final message to his family via letters. Anyone familiar with the series knows that this isn't something new for Violet, and so she takes on the job. But what makes her different from how she was in the series to the film is the emotional maturity that Violet had developed throughout the years. When Eurus's family makes a surprise visit to the hospital, he makes Violet hide underneath the bed because he wants to keep his letters a secret from his family, but the way he talks to his family came off as a bit rude and even ungrateful at times. However, reading more into his mind, he doesn't want to be treated with pity anymore. He knows that his family has good intentions, but there's only so much one can say when you know the end is soon coming. Eurus wants to be treated normally and doesn't want to seem like a burden on them, which is why he acts so coldly to his family. However, it's through Violet's experience and wisdom does she teach Eurus that your true emotions need to be conveyed, otherwise you might regret never saying them. Violet is able to write the letters for his parents and little brother, but there was still a person who he wanted to talk to but was too ashamed to meet. His childhood friend. Violet makes a promise to Eurus that she'll write and deliver his final letters, but it's also during this time where she learns that Major Gilbert could still be alive. She sets sail with Hodgins to a faraway island on the slim chance that he might be alive. For Violet, Major Gilbert was her everything. He gave her purpose when no one else would and treated her with kindness and compassion. It makes sense then why Violet would be so flustered and overwhelmed, as this was finally her chance to say everything she ever wanted but couldn't do in the past. However, when the two arrive on the island, Gilbert refuses to meet with Violet because of their time together during the war. He feels immense guilt because in his eyes, he took away a childhood Violet was never able to experience. He reluctantly used Violet as a tool for warfare, and this leads to the guilt and trauma that he has had for years. Gilbert wanted nothing more than for Violet to grow into the name that he gave her, a flower which symbolized love. It's why then he feels so much self-resentment and thinks that he doesn't deserve to meet with her again because it would cause her so much pain. Upon hearing these words from Hodgins, Violet is utterly devastated that he refuses to meet with her. She tries one last time to confront him at his house, but her words ultimately fall flat. The door to his heart is both literally and figuratively shut, as conveyed from the great cinematography. It's also at this point in the film where Eurus goes into critical condition. While Violet wants nothing more than to meet with the person who shaped her life, she also made a promise with a dying boy to write his final letter, and I think her decision to leave the island and keep her promise speaks volumes of her character and how much she's matured. Violet is content knowing that Gilbert is alive and well, even if she can't meet with him. She writes one final letter for him before she departs, but is stopped due to a heavy storm. Back at the hospital during Eurys's final moments, Violet is unable to be there for him, but he just smiles as he understood how important it is for her to find that one person. And just as it seems that all hope is lost, the new invention of the telephone was able to give him his last wish of talking to his best friend. It's an emotional and heart-wrenching moment, but it's scenes like this where the show truly excels in, and just as Violet is about to leave the island, Gilbert reads the letter that Violet wrote for him, pouring all her heart and soul into a single message, and the emotions that she kept inside for the Major finally reached him as he chases after her. I think it's truly poetic how Violet, after all this time, was able to communicate her feelings that she had pent up deep inside. Violet, who was once the emotionless doll that didn't understand the nuances and subtlety of emotions, wrote a letter that conveyed all the things she was unable to do in the beginning. The final moment whether to embrace in the ocean under the deep blue moonlight is something truly beautiful and earned. It's the moment where all the elements in a story come together to give an experience many shows and movies fail to do: a human connection. The cinematography, animation, voice acting, music, and themes all culminate into a single breathtaking and cathartic moment. This is the reason why I watch anime, because live action media for me is unable to capture these genuine emotional scenes that surpass beyond just storytelling and become human experiences. The average person might think that movies and TV shows are just forms of entertainment and that you shouldn't take them too seriously, but I think that's such a narrow-minded mindset, as art is meant to convey the aspects of humanity that people experience and live through expression and storytelling. To say that it's nothing more than entertainment is ignorant. One of the main reasons why I have a channel and make video essays is because it lets me express the emotions I have about stories that I love. If I didn't have an outlet to do this, I would just be holding my emotions inside. But as Violet Evergarden and all of KyoAni's other works have shown, being able to convey your emotions is something priceless. Thank you, Kyoto Animation, for all the stories you have told and will continue to tell in the future. And that is why the end of Violet Evergarden matters. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, tell me in the comments down below. Subscribe, and why not check out some of my other videos where I break down A Silent Voice or the Violet Evergarden series. It's been Kevin, and I'll see you all next time.